Yeah, thank you for everyone who joined and is going to join this session here. I think that's pretty cool that we have the opportunity to discuss here a little bit about the marketplaces. And I tell you why I'm doing this actually, and because it's like a topic that I have in my heart since a couple of years, and I think it's very important to understand the nature of the platform business. And that's why we brought out a brochure. I don't have so many in here. There's some more downstairs, but there's a QR code pretty soon. You can scan it. You can hand it out to your neighbor if you want to just like flip through it here in the next 45 minutes that we are spending together. And maybe you find some insights. So you don't have to take the paper, but you're happy to do so. If you want more, there's somewhere downstairs. So what's the idea? The idea is talking about that issue. And the funny thing is, actually, we started discussing in 2019, and that was just before COVID hit. We said that there's something going on in the market, okay? Talking about Europe, like most of the time, and later on talk a little bit about Asia and how this is affecting what we are doing. So what happened in Europe, marketplaces basically took over the e-commerce game. And some of us have some years experience in e-commerce. Well, I do since like 20 years. And 20 years ago, brands were opening their online shop and trying to get traffic to their online shop and sell their stuff through their own online shop. Nowadays, there are so many brands that are not even brands that go to the marketplaces and sell their stuff, and the customer doesn't care about brand anymore. And so that was basically the momentum we saw. And then in 2020, when we brought this study to the market, the numbers were really fascinating, and they were growing so dramatically, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. Then later on in 2022, we did the second study because this one was pretty successful and went a little bit more into detail and put a lot of content into this document. And the idea was not us explaining the word, but bringing experts to tell us for our clients, for our partners, for our friends, the best know-how they have, and put this into one piece of paper. So it's really like a nice dossier. And so we did this again last year. So this is pretty fresh. And I would say it's pretty accurate, and makes totally sense to discuss this here in Asia, because Asia is changing the rules of the game. So if you're more like a digital person or version of that you're interested in, you can scan that QR code. That's not my LinkedIn profile. You can contact me later, even though most of us, I think we're already connected. But yeah, you also find that on LinkedIn. I think we posted it today. It just really opened in the last days to have this platform dossier in the English version. Yeah, what I'm going to talk about is like mapping the platform economy and then the rise of the business enabler universe. You might be interested in what this is all about. Then the marketplace flywheel. It's something that actually we invented from our side. And what are the lessons from Europe, and what are the like 4+1 success pillar? And that's basically the news that starting the last year, basically we don't talk about an evolution anymore in the platform business. We talk about a revolution. So it's really changing dramatically, and I'll tell you in a second why this is like it is. So in 2022, maybe I put this chart. The mind-blowing reality in 2020, right before the start of COVID, was actually this chart. So we were really the first ones. By that time, I was not in NFQ. I was Ecom Consulting, so this is why the logo is in there. People were aware that there's a marketplace shift in the e-commerce world, but no one knew what this really meant. Okay, so we were like the first ones to bring a map of all the players in the market. So basically we did for weeks, we had people researching on what marketplaces did we have in 2015 and how many did we have in 2020. And this is before COVID. Okay, so it doubled basically from 2015 to 2020. And what we did there, we split the market in the B2C market into the B2B, the customer to customer, the price comparison platform, and the social and content commerce. And the social and content commerce was pretty small at the beginning. So that was only like 15 players.
And that's just Germany? Or?
No, that's the DACH region. That's the DACH region. So it's kind of difficult. We were also like trying to get like a geographical version of that stuff, but they don't tell it all the time where they are and how they ship and stuff. Sometimes platforms don't even tell they're a platform. They just act like it, but they don't tell your client or your customer. So, and the shift went on by 40%, but on much higher numbers in 2022. So if your expectation is, and that was actually on the market, so come on, Oliver, please do a next study and tell us how many marketplaces we have by now. I said, no, I'm not interested. Because if you have more than 250 players in the B2C sector, if it's 280 or 320, no one cares. Okay, and then you just have people saying, no, this one's not active anymore, you have missed this one, you have missed this one. So there's no news to this. So that's why we put other content into the focus, because actually we think that the market is pretty much changing. When we talk about Germany, I mean, most of us are aware, and I think most of us are from Germany here. Who's not from Germany? Welcome. Where are you from?
The US.
From the US. Oh, that's cool. So you learned something about Europe. Good to have you here. So in Germany, we have the really dominant player, which is Amazon. And so everybody was going on the big marketplace, Amazon. We have more than 50% market share in e-commerce from Amazon. So pretty comparable to, I guess, what you have in the US market. And but there's the first thing, many brands and retailers don't realize that there are many other big players in other markets, for instance, in the Netherlands or in Poland or in the Scandics. And these are the markets where Amazon was not active. So Amazon was focusing on Germany, was focusing on France, but they were not in Switzerland, for instance. They were not in Netherlands. So that's why we have like kind of a structure. And I mean, it's pretty obvious if you talk about business development perspective, you tell the brands to look into Europe and go a little bit more cross-border. Meanwhile, when we don't want to talk only about e-commerce and like shops and how to do your business, in parallel, there were these big ecosystems growing like all over the planet. And so they turned from a business model into a platform. So it's always like the same story. You start like cheap services of something that are very relevant, that are very cool, and then you try to convert it into like from a freemium to a premium version, and then you try to make money out of that by either media or by whatever. So, and it's getting harder and harder for small players and individual players to get their market share in the market and to rise in the market and to be successful in the market, because platforms basically were taking over. And what we saw, and actually, who knows the Amazon flywheel? Okay, the Amazon flywheel, it's pretty much that Jeff Bezos wrote on a, that's the story it goes, he wrote it on a napkin at the very early days and say, okay, this is how our business is going to work in the future. And that's basically, you want to go on a low price, you want to win a lot of customers, then you want to attract more suppliers. With more suppliers, it's more interesting for more customers. With more suppliers, you have more competition, you're going to be more cheap. With more cheap, you can have more customers, etc. So it's really like a platform only works really well when you have these platform effects on it. So, and what we said, why is the marketplace growing? So basically, it's most of the time it's a growing ecosystem. So it's not only the platform itself, it's the services that are gathered around these platforms. And so if you have a good, for instance, marketplace management, then you are attractive for brands and sellers. And the more attractive you are for brands and sellers, and the easier it is for brands to get on these, then they want to go on there. If more brands and sellers on board to multiple marketplaces, and that's what's happening right now, and that's what happened in the last years, this will also lead to the growth. Then we have new marketplaces and new verticals that grow out of that. So we have more demand for the issue solving. So this all is like a nice flywheel. And on top of that, and that's something we saw in e-commerce for the online shops like 15 years ago, a lot of funding went into this. And for the last years, a lot of funding went into marketplaces. So basically more investors, new funding, and this leads to more innovation and to better standards. So basically it's once, and that's one of our hypotheses that we have, once you have a certain level, it's kind of hard to beat the platform because everybody's interested that it grows. So everybody is still going on that. So that's the explanation why Amazon is still growing, even though many people are not happy that they do. So that's basically the chart. Most of us know this already, how much they have been growing. And they started here only in 2016. And so you saw a chart from starting basically in 2015. And then basically what was growing was the platform share. That's the red one, sorry. So the third-party business, they did other stuff. It's pretty interesting to have a deeper look into Amazon. What was happening in parallel, and for us, it's always from a strategy consulting approach, sort of always a good recommendation for brands to use the opportunities you have in your markets. And in Europe, we have one market basically within the EU. It got a little bit more complicated with the Brexit, but basically you can do quite good business. And the cross-border business that we have, I think that's 2023. I'm not pretty sure. That's like 200 billion euros. So that's not too bad. We have an e-commerce transaction volume of like 100 billion euros only in Germany, but that's like the German market. So, but 200 billion is cross-border. So that's a pretty impressive number. But still, many players are only doing business within their country. And if you go on big conferences like the K5 and you ask like who did internationalize, they all raise their hand, and then you ask like who did internationalize besides Austria. Okay, when the hands basically go down. And interesting so far, and I think this is going to change. Out of that, 42% was web shops. So it's like big players that attract business, and I think this number is going to go down, and there will be more business going to the marketplaces for international business. And my kids, they shop internationally. They don't look into the business model. Is it a marketplace or is it an online shop? They don't care. It's just like you have more selection on the big marketplaces usually. If we look into IT side, and some of us are here also for IT reasons, of course, and it makes a lot of sense. We defined a name and we called it like Business Enabler Universe. And that changes the game a little bit. Also, it's kind of difficult for agencies because there's an ecosystem, and that's what I said before, an ecosystem for service providers, solution providers in these areas, let's say like finance and admin, digital commerce software, connectors, logistics, customer experience, etc. And no one has to build anything anymore. You just have to select the right players, which is not so easy because most of them promise you so much that they can do pretty much everything, and you'll find out only once you hired them and implemented them and say like, oh, this interface is really shitty. They don't really connect to Amazon. They just have something where you plug in and upload the data, but you can never check your whatever pricing on Amazon or whatever. So you really need to understand like what do you need for your picture. So I think it's more like configuring the optimal IT architecture and not that much like building something from scratch anymore. The funny thing is that even if you do something and build like an ideal infrastructure, this it evolves so quickly. So there's always something new coming up, and that's the first time I have to talk about AI, because AI, of course, will change that a lot because new solutions arise quicker and then they develop quicker. And I mean, if you see the adaptation in your own life and in the media, if there's something new with AI and everybody goes like in like 2 hours, everybody is trying to get an understanding of DeepSeek. So if you have someone who pretends to understand this game and say, I have an AI and tell you like what's the best organization for you, then everybody will at least try it. So it's a pretty tough game for an agency, I would say, in the long run or already in this situation. Okay, that's not fair what they're doing over there. So in this time, I would say it's very much about doing as many platforms with as many products as possible with a very efficient way of doing it. So that's basically why you use these tools. So it's about toolification and an optimization game. Okay, so it's like productization of the marketplace business. What we see in total, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but I think it's pretty interesting that what you can see is many people or many companies were going and investing into the platform business, but there's only few winners and many losers, because who needs 10 Amazons? Who needs 10 eBays? The user doesn't, actually. So this is going to there will be some more platforms going out of the market or migrating. So what's very relevant, and then you need to tell this to your clients, okay? We always say, like, the marketplace business is a decathlon. It's not about the listing of products and make this work. It's about understanding the whole thing and continuously keeping up of what's the next thing you have to do. And it's about also a lot of content generation, and we'll come to that in a second. So the speed is very relevant. The consolidation will come. Knowledge about what's going on here is super relevant. And in the last 10 years, and still as of today, we meet companies that want to go onto marketplaces, and they use an intern for doing the CSV upload onto whatever platform and think that's what they're doing is right. Well, good luck. So, focus, focus, focus. I think that's pretty relevant in many things we have to discuss and we see. And I mean, nowadays also, especially in Europe, especially in the German-speaking region, we are not so bullish. So it's really good to be in Southeast Asia, because the market is growing, the demand is growing. So there's a lot of innovation also. In Europe is a little bit much more like defending your existing status quo and trying to be profitable while growing, but it's not about growth all the time anymore. So it's really about making money. So for this year's dossier that we presented, we said, oh, no, the market is changing actually, and we said, okay, we had the platform Big Bang, like long time ago when it started with these players. By that time, that was not a marketplace, but it still was the idea of going into a platform. Then we had the transformation and the optimization and toolification, and right now we're in the revolution. And I mean, it's actually the Asian players that show us a new way of working and a new way of doing business and a new way of doing e-commerce. And not everybody in the DACH region or in Europe has really understood that and has seen the sheer impact of what's going on the market. And so I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit. And basically, it's the rules of the platform are changing. It's social commerce, conversational, AI, live shopping, metaverse, all these things that are really changing the existing know-how. In the past, it was always relevant to have, so it started here with this one. It started with technology and the importance of telecom. That's what it says, like how relevant is one of these success factors, and the impact of technology went a little bit down, because at the beginning you had to build something from scratch, and now it's like a commodity sort of. Then you had that's a tricky one, the business model clarity. At the beginning, no one cares if it's eBay, if it's B2B, if it's B2C or something, you could experiment. But then later on, when we came from the seller from the vendor business to a seller business, so at the beginning you sold to the platform, and then later on you became a seller yourself on the platforms. Big brands were struggling so hard in understanding the new rules and how to manage their brand and their clients and their products, that this was like, for a time, that was like the most relevant thing you need to understand. Logistics at the beginning was not relevant. Then Amazon came and introduced FBA. And now, my view, especially in Europe, I think that's a big difference to the US. It's so much standard that you have like a next day delivery, but everybody believes only Amazon is doing, but everyone else is doing this as well. So not 100%, yeah. And I mean, in the US, you have like, sometimes it's normal to wait 3 to 5 days for something. And nowadays, and that's why it's also going down, logistics, people are not so interested about that anymore. They can wait for something. And yeah, that's basically the things I had to explain here. Yeah, and then at the beginning, let's exclude eBay, because eBay was pretty exciting, because like with the bidding process and of, do I get this product or not? That was something really cool. That was a really nice service. But besides that, e-commerce shopping is pretty much boring, okay? And it's the same since 20 years. And now this is changing. And so we call this like inspiration, or you can call it entertainment also. And this factor is now more relevant. It gained relevance in the last times. If we go a little bit deeper into that, that's something it's pretty easy to transport to your clients if you're like more on the solution provider side. The complexity of playing on different platforms rises dramatically. Okay, so you can start easily if you have like one platform. You can do this CSV stuff. Okay, you can be very manual in your processes. But the more platforms, and this is basically the number up here, the more complex the processes that you have to realize internally. So that's one thing that's about the services. But there, on the other hand, you have all these solution providers, and they basically promise you that they are doing the job of scaling your platform business. For business model clarity, I think something nowadays is really the discussion between own retail and third-party seller. And what we always try to tell our clients, that they need to define for themselves like really good old stuff. Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people were talking about USPs and what does my brand do better than other brands, okay? And nowadays, especially with young entrepreneurs and startups, sometimes I have the feeling, oh, I invented the new white t-shirt game. Is that a USP these days? I'm not pretty sure. So be careful on the selection, what you do. Be careful for what clients you do your business. And so it's really, really important to have clarity on the business model. So that's not an IT question. For logistics, I already said it a little bit. Amazon FBA set new standards. And the challenge that the marketplaces actually have, they tried to copy sometimes the FBA services, the fulfillment by Amazon, but many of them don't succeed because they underestimate the vast range of products that they have to fulfill and the complexity for the logistics and stuff. So that's not so easy. So that's still a USP for Amazon. Maybe with Zalando and About You, they will hopefully do a little bit better on their logistics end. I think in the next years, and what we see, and that was basically, I think Shein was the first one, and then Temu, they completely changed the game. They started this business, which is directly from factory. And then we had all the discussion, how to bring goods from China, basically, and 95% is China, to Europe, and then sell it to the end customer, and how does that work, and why is that legal, and why can they do the costs for all of that? It's all relevant question, but in the end it works. It's a business model that works. Politics are changing a little bit, but what's also happening, and that's something you might need to discuss for yourself or with your clients, if you talk to About You or Zalando in like more private settings, because they don't sell it in the media, they're experimenting with that. So they also start basically shipping directly from the production side to the European markets and then sell directly and see how that all works. Because in the end, I have a track record in logistics for like 10 years. I mean, every time you touch something, you lose money. Okay, so, and if you skip like 3 times stopover and someone else is doing something, that's €3. Okay, and you might put this onto something else. So in the end, it works. And that's a new game. And it's not so easy because we have optimized the European logistics in the last 20 years, and now there's different rules for that. If we talk about reach, like I said before, this flywheel is, and that's basically what I explained, that's the Amazon flywheel. These platforms grow by themselves as long as they position them well and as long as their service promise is actually matching the reality. And then you also go to the other platforms. So it's very hard right now to build up an online shop and be successful, but you can use the big players and the big platforms to increase your reach. So what's happening right now, and that's something we can probably also discuss in a second. The business model most of us know. Okay, people go on Google and then they search something. And then sometimes we say like, no, they don't go on Google, they go on Amazon. Especially in Europe they do it, or in Germany they do it. So it's like, I think 80% of the, it's not the perfect number, but around like 80% of the product search starts on Amazon and not on Google anymore. It was different like 10 years ago. And so you do this, and then you're distributed because they have the most money. You are distributed to eBay or Amazon or to other players, because if you go on Google or you go directly to Amazon. And now people are swiping, and people are inspired, and they're getting other content, and they get other information, and they don't go on a search anymore. The product comes to them. Okay, and if it's relevant to them, that is defined by an algorithm and not by your 5 bullet points product description that are really good for SEO purposes or something like that. So it's a completely different ballgame. And that's not only on Shemu or on Shemu, that's a good one, on on Temu, but it's also on platforms like Twitch that people like me don't really use. I don't know who uses Twitch. You do?
Kids.
Huh? Twitch?
Kids
do?
Yeah.
Okay. Also elderly people do it sometimes. Yeah. So it's like a streaming platform portal for various stuff. For what? For everything, for pretty much everything. Yeah. So that's actually what's happening there on the market. And yeah, actually, so this is really where Asia and Europe come together. And because Europe is still an interesting market. And no one really knows what happens when TikTok is actually opening the shopping functionality in Europe. They tested it in Great Britain, but not in Germany yet, as far as I know. But that will happen. I mean, there's a TikTok teams on these e-commerce conferences right now, and they are doing sales, they are onboarding partners. And I mean, like 20 years ago, brands like Adidas and Puma and Nike, they said they're not going to sell on the platforms. Well, everybody does. Now they're telling the same story, but everybody will. Okay? And the funny thing is that they are on Instagram anyhow. So they don't have to open the brand awareness. It's already there. So that will happen, and that will have a vast impact. I think nonetheless, it's still relevant to understand and know and optimize the existing game. But if you talk to your clients, if you talk to solution providers, I would always say, like, what does this mean for you, for your future? And I have like a little schematic approach that brings a little bit the IT perspective into, and also some AI questions, of course. So how was the process in the past? You have a full assortment and you assign that to e-commerce, and then you want to have the people on there to do on the search bar and basically find something with SEO, and you have all this data down here, and you need to bring this to the platforms. Okay? If you're really cool, you already have some special information on some hero product that you want to sell. You bring it to the newsletter, maybe to WhatsApp or whatever. You maybe create a landing page and do newsletter and social media on that. But still not everybody is capable of doing this on a technical way. So that's still something that's pretty hard for some of the players. But now this is actually turned around, because here you have a kind of easy relationship, because it's the relationship from you as a brand with your assortment to the marketplace. And you basically give everything up there and you ignore what's going on in the marketplace, kind of, okay? And now it's more like a one-to-one relationship that you have to build with these platforms, and you have to provide them content that is then again very much individualized. Okay? So this is completely changing the logic on how to look onto data. Okay? And if you think back to the business enabler universe, I think this business enabler universe is not yet prepared for that. Okay? So that's also one of the reasons why we are a little slow on adapting in these changes, because I don't really know, I don't know if anybody knows here in the room, like these platforms, they're basically built by themselves. So they have the infrastructure and they control everything, and we use tools that are not prepared for basically doing that stuff. So this is something which is really challenging. And that's also a big opportunity actually, Nay, for Asian players to come to Europe. Okay, so because here you have Shopee and other players that are more advanced, and they have the speed of adapting. So I wouldn't be super surprised if we see more Asian players coming to Europe. And I don't know if you want to see that, but probably that's going to happen. Yes, Ralf.
Do you think there is a difference between B2B and B2C?
Especially in this picture, yes. For e-commerce and marketplace, my answer is always it's not a big difference, because the B2B buyers are nowadays most of the time human beings, and they have a shopping behavior as human beings, and they buy what they see and what they like, and they want to have smooth processes. I don't see B2B on this very entertaining educational side yet, because you also have a smaller market, sort of. Does it make sense for, I don't know, a steel production company, Klöckner, for instance? They're pretty good in digital business. Does it make sense to promote this on these channels?
Yes.
Yes? You want to elaborate on that?
10 years ago, we thought B2B shops could be ugly or can be ugly. So now we say the same, or we don't need to do B2B on social platforms. And 10 years ahead, I think, of course, yes, they are humans. You just said it. Would you, let's say, use different platforms for B2B? Let's say, for instance, LinkedIn, you go to LinkedIn, but you don't go to TikTok. This is kind of like a more specific. Maybe, but why not catch the one who's purchasing steel at night?
I'm not against it, and you're right. And 10 years ago, I was not saying what you were saying. So basically, we were telling companies that this is going to happen, and that's why B2B is growing so much and B2B is so relevant. But still, most of the agencies, they focus on the B2C, okay? Which I don't understand. But I'm skeptical about this social aspect of, but still, why not try it? You had a question. Yeah.
I think they will happen.
Yeah.
I think the main difference is they're not buying for themselves. So that's not so emotional. That's
Yeah. Yeah, so time will tell. It's a very good question. Jennifer.
From what I observed, it's very interesting for some B2B companies to do certain topics, for example on TikTok, and other topics than on LinkedIn. So they adapt towards people like towards the top groups that are there. For example, HR topics, like in order to get new talents, they go on TikTok to talk about themselves. And this is just an example.
Yeah. So there's still a huge opportunity on adapting, and because there are some service providers in here also. So I think it's pretty interesting to understand that game. Just one chart on Amazon, because many people think of Amazon that this is just an online shop and you can buy products there. But Amazon is a huge ecosystem. So they have all that stuff. When we talk about Twitch, that's part of Amazon. They bought them, okay? But nobody talks about that really. And they show live tennis from Wimbledon. So they have a specific audience over there. And they have Prime Video. And so they have this marketing cloud. So we have 80 million Germans. And 60 million Germans are every month on this platform. So it's huge. It's pretty hard to play against Amazon. So you rather play with Amazon, which makes them even stronger. So that's like a kind of stupid ball game. Last slide with content, and I'm not going to read through all of that, but that's something maybe we might discuss in the next days or tonight. I don't know. I'm very happy to do so. In all these success factors, AI will play a dramatic role. Okay, it will be on the reach side because you will have like new sellers onboarding pretty easy. The assortment will be much better. The product data enhancement will be much quicker. For technology, I mean, there's many things going on. We talked about this business enabler universe, how this is going to change. For the business model side, you will optimize your revenue streams, because many people, if they go into the platform business, they hear that Amazon is pretty successful in media revenue, but no one does it really. I mean, you have to be in a certain size to afford that and really make a business model of that. For logistics, I mean, we have a couple of projects where we talk about AI warehouse optimization and get rid of old infrastructure that is in your warehouse since 20 years. you need to optimize your stock. There's these agile robots, they are with AI. So there's many things going on. And last not least, for inspiration, something many marketeers have dreamed about is personalized content. Okay, but it was so hard to produce this and so expensive to produce this. Now we have AI to do it. I mean, I don't know who listened to the Pops speech down there. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, we talk about IP and stuff, but still the technique is there, the technology, and it will also come in Germany. If not, it's already there. So that's basically the part that I wanted to present to you and discuss with you a little bit. We have some more minutes, so if you want to have like a comment or a question on that, I'm happy to be here. I don't know if I have a good answer though.
What about the connection between the ERP systems of big companies and the platforms? Are they many connected, or how do they order?
Well, basically, one thing that changed on the Asian market, the ERP system is really open and more agile and flexible. In Europe, we have more these old systems that are not done for this interactivity. So that's why you have this layer often, which is in between whatever sort of technology this is. Maybe you talk to Ralph or someone else here who's more tech savvy, or Lars over there. I think ERP is still something you want to protect, and you don't want it to be open or completely in the cloud and have direct connection to Temu or something. Well, I wouldn't do this. Yeah. So it's more like a discussion, do you mean an online ERP, or do you mean like your ERP with your contracts and your financial data and the revenue streams and stuff like that? So I think. Okay. I just have this one slide for NFQ Solutions, because that's something that Lars was telling on stage, and people sometimes like wonder, what does this really mean? This shift from scaling companies to scaling business, which we put on our website, and sometimes it's not easy to just understand that. And unfortunately, you don't see the color here. But I think we are coming from a very good operational side. Okay, but we were not focusing enough on doing the right things right. So we were just doing things in the right way, but maybe not always the right things. And that's why we said, okay, we have to go to the strategy side as well and ask the right questions in order to come up by challenging people, business, and technology, and not only technology, and then come up with the right requirements. That's basically what up here in this arrow, and then bring it to the operation. And I think something that's also pretty relevant to have the stream back of information from operations to strategy, because that's what's lacking in many companies. You start with something, and then you realize, like after 1 or 2 years, the reality is a little bit different than what you have planned and what you have assumed. Okay, so then you gotta go back onto the strategy part and say, okay, how does that impact on what actually I have to do and what I have to change in my organization? So there are some people within NFQ that are now like focusing much more on understanding the customer's needs and on the business requirement and stuff like that. But we are still your preferred implementation partner. So that's basically it. That's me. If you're not connected, that's again the platform dossier. You can take it with you, you can leave it here, however you feel like. Thanks for your time.